Hello, and welcome back to Random Vids. So, today, I'm going to be talking about one of, in my opinion, probably the best kids show out there. I think you know what I'm talking about. Bring It On, Bluey. Man, this show is actually, honestly a pretty good show. I've seen it before, and it's actually pretty good. It's like, who cares that I'm 19 years old and still watch that show? Who gives a crap? Am I right? Anywho, about 2 years ago, very end of 2021, I tried ranking all the Bluey episodes from season 1. And that went swimmingly because the video got copyright claimed, and then obviously I couldn't upload them anymore. So yeah, we are not going to be doing any videos, just like a lot of the other shows are ranked like SpongeBob. You can never be too careful, if you know what I mean. Anywho, I thought it'd be kind of cool to look at the top 5 worst and best Bluey episodes. And because I think Bluey just does such a good job, as a kid's show, it's hard to find bad episodes or ones that just aren't as good as others. I can definitely find good ones though, and ones I can enjoy. So anywho, let's get on to this, whatever you want to call it, countdown thingy. Let's start at the 5th worst, which is Bob Bilby. Not gonna lie, I think this was actually the very first Bluey episode that I've ever seen, and it's one heck of a one to start with, that's for sure. Basically, Bingo gets to take a puppet home, and the meantime, they get to, I guess, take pictures of the wonderful things that Bingo and this puppet has done. Okay. Yeah, screw friends, we just have puppets now. Because that totally makes all the sense. However, Bluey and Bingo spend way too much time on their phones and tablets, so they don't really have many fun and fond memories of Bob Bilby until they actually, end up going out and doing things. I guess the message is kind of interesting, showing that phones and online stuff is bad, okay. But they also showed that same message in an episode from season 2 that's a lot better in my opinion, the one where they go on a road trip and they forgot their tablets and stuff. I think my main problem about this episode is that it just feels so boring. We don't really do much in this episode besides Bingo playing with this puppet and having to take pictures. We've seen toys before in the show, like the toy Bluey gets for Christmas in an episode. But that episode is actually pretty interesting and actually quite funny. This one, there ain't really much funny stuff in it, and it's just kind of a square episode put into season 1. So yeah, this is definitely one of the worser season 1 episodes. Let's move on to the 5th best, and that episode is The Creek. Man, such a good episode. I come back watching this one, and I like it more each time. It's just such a good one. And I mean, any episode with Mackenzie in it is automatically a plus. Anywho, Bluey, Bingo, and Mackenzie are playing at the playground, but they start getting bored. So they get Bandit to take them into a forest and just, explore the forest. Bluey's a little hesitant, but she goes anyway. And they go through a bunch of different obstacles, like jumping over a waterfall, whatever. They find these creatures. It's kind of cool. And then you can see the infinite creek. And it's just a really cool, scenic type of episode. I don't know what you want me to call it. Plus, I love Mackenzie in this episode. He's just so, hyper and, enthusiastic and just ready to go. Full of energy, basically, is what I'm trying to say. He just seems so happy in this episode. I love seeing him like that. And then there's many other funny scenes in this episode too. Plus, it's just overall such a good episode. I don't know what it is. I just really enjoy this one. The scenery is great. Having Mackenzie in it obviously is great too. This one's a pretty good episode. There's another one sort of like this called The Beach, but that episode is just more meh in my opinion. It's a little more dry compared to this one. So yeah, this one is definitely one of the best ones of season 1. Now let's move on to my 4th least favorite, And that would be fairies. Oh boy. So basically, Bingo makes a heart out of dominoes, and she wants to show Bandit. However, Bandit is in the middle of a very important phone call, and he slightly snaps at Bingo, who then gets upset. Because, Bingo is there trying to tug at his tail and stuff, and Bandit seems pretty busy in the moment. So Bingo gets upset and knocks over the heart domino thing. Then all of a sudden, this fairy thing apparently starts tricking the healers into doing a bunch of very weird tasks. Not tasks, but just a bunch of funny, weird stuff. I don't know what you want to call it. And I guess some parts of this episode is kind of funny, but the whole reason is just kind of weird. And then apparently at the end, Bingo gets stuck with fingers up her nose. And the only way to free it is for Bandit to do a dance. Which honestly is just really weird, just because why out of all the characters did Bandit have to be the one getting punished? Like, he did absolutely nothing. He was just telling Bingo to just not now. He can't just stop right in the middle of his important phone call to go see what Bingo wanted to see. Obviously, once he's done, yeah, but I don't know, I just feel like Bandit got punished for absolutely nothing. And it gets worse when Chili gets in too, and is like, maybe someone upset the fairies. What do you mean someone upset the fairies? Where did that come from? It's kind of like Bad Mood, where Bingo's in a bad mood, but that episode was actually done well, and it was funny. This episode also reminds me of Asparagus and Magic Xylophone, but both of those episodes are done way better than this one. I don't know, this is one of those episodes I really grown to hate. Every time I rewatch Bluey, I just skip this episode. It's just pretty pointless. Alright, enough said. Now let's move on to the fourth best, which is Taxi. You gotta love the episodes where it jumps immediately into action, with all the healers joining in. Ones like this one, for an example, from Season 1. I love these type of episodes. And it's kind of funny seeing Bluey the taxi driver, and then Bandit hopping in to get to the airport, and then a bunch of funny things happen, like Bingo hops in and just makes it more funnier. Plus, with the help of Chili the meth, it gets lost, and it's just one of those chaotic episodes that's really hard to explain, but like when you watch it, you know what I mean. It's just you'll have a good time. And then I love the whole ending thing too, with Bandit finally getting to the airport, and then the pilot is just Bluey. It's just such a chaotic, funny episode. It's always been one of my favorites when I first started watching it, and it still is. Yet again, this is one of the better Season 1 episodes, for sure. And I just don't really have anything else to say. It's a great episode. Now let's move on to the third worst, which is Copycat. I never understood the reasoning for this episode. It's just such a weird one. Basically, the episode starts off with Bluey copying every single move that Bandit does. Eventually, they go outside and find a dead bungee, which is a type of bird. But to be 100% sure, they take this so-called bungee bird, whatever, to the vet, and the bird is indeed dead. So Bluey is sort of sad, I guess, on the way back. And then, by the time they get back, she ends up playing the game with Bingo to, I guess, help? But, okay, I guess apparently it did help. Where they pretend Bingo's the one who fell, and Bingo's the bird now. This episode is just so awkward. The whole thing is so awkward. They should have just stuck with the whole Bluey copying Bandit thing, because that would have been really funny to see for a full episode. But then getting to the dead bird just completely destroyed any chances of making a good episode. The whole rest of the episode just felt really filler and long. A lot of sandbagging can be found in this episode, and it's sad. It's from Bluey, one of my favorite shows, yet we still can't get away from the filler. Also the fact that they dealt with sadness, a lot better. Like, for example, in Camping, when Jean-Luc leaves, Bluey is sad, and they show that she's sad a lot better than they do in ones like this. Anywho, not much else to really have to say about this episode. It is easily one of the weakest ones of Season 1. And it's just meh. I just don't really like this one at all. It's always one I tend to skip. Also, nothing else I have to say. So let's move on to the third best, which is camping. Oh, you knew this one was going to be on here somewhere. Usually it's around the number 1, maybe 2 spot from season 1, and for me, it's probably number 3. I always get interchangeable here. What an amazing episode. Bluey and Bingo, and apparently only Muffin but no socks, is out camping. And another family is camping too. And Bluey ends up meeting their son, Jean-Luc, who doesn't speak English. So we get to see these really cool, innovative ways of Bluey and Jean-Luc playing while, not really communicating. Like the Wild Boar Bandit, for an example. Gotta love those scenes. And even when the point where Jean-Luc knows he's not going to be there the next day, and Bluey doesn't know. And of course, when Bluey finds out, Bluey is sad, which is very understandable. And like I said before, it's done a lot better in this one than it was in Copycat. Like, I don't know what they did in that episode, but they didn't really handle Bluey being sad really that right. Then we get a funny epilogue to this episode where Bluey's grown up, and she ends up seeing Jean-Luc again, with the tree that they planted, which is now, a giant tree. It's a pretty good episode. It's definitely one of my favorites from Season 1. I just think it gets a little emotional at times, which is why it's not quite my favorite, but it's definitely a really good one. Now let's move on to the second worst, which is Sean. Oh boy, oh goody. What an interesting episode. I swear, I've only seen this episode like twice. It's just so plain. Basically, Bluey wants a pet. Dad says no. Dad pretends to have a pet. And the pet is just a pair of hands. Wow, how innovative. How innovative. You gotta love the disappointment coming off of Bluey and Bingo too, when they realize that their pet is a pair of hands. And the pair of hands that are Bandit's hands aren't funny either. It'd be like if he tried to make a candle walk around and dance. It ain't that funny. In fact, it would be funnier than a pair of hands. Even I was a little disappointed when Bandit said, "Oh, we do have a pet, and it's my hands." Like, it just really was a big, trick. And Sean doesn't, well, I should say Sean doesn't like Bluey, but Bluey and Sean don't really, see eye to eye in the beginning. So, of course, then we get the whole dumb, you have to be nice to your pet thing. It's just so, oh my goodness. Episodes like Bob Bilby and Copycat were very filler. This episode was also very filler. They literally do nothing except for train the pet. It's just so pointless. And when it comes to Bluey, puppets just don't work that well. Look at this. We got Bob Bilby and Sean both on the list, and they're both like puppet things. And they both have super unnecessary episodes too. Look at Season 2, we got Monkey Jocks. One of the worst episodes from Season 2. I'm glad at least around Season 3 they got their puppet characters better, because we got Unicorns, and he's definitely the best out of the bunch. But honestly, there's nothing much else I really have to say about this episode. It's just so square and boring. And there's definitely a lot of filler in this episode too. It's just so bad. It's so boring that it's bad. Alright, we should move on to the second best now. And that would be Mums and Dads. Who else thinks Indy and Rusty would be a cute couple together? I know I'm not the only one out there. Anywho, Indy and Rusty fight because they think that the mom should stay at home and the dad should go to work, and Indy's vice versa. So they both try to play with a bunch of other school kids. Well, at least Indy tries to be the dad, and Rusty tries to play with Bluey to be the mom. And it's really funny too how Bluey uses Rusty as the baby, which is just such a silly scene. And everyone that Indy tries to play with just doesn't know how to play the game, or doesn't play it the way she wants them to, I guess. So Indy and Rusty at the end up becoming good friends again. It's just such a sweet episode. Also the fact that it's focused on some of my favorite characters, and not just the Healer family all the time. Like Rusty, for an example, easily one of my favorite characters. And it's nice seeing a lot of the side characters that we never really see either, like Indy, Winton, the Terriers, Snickers. I can go on and on. Especially now in like season 3, we hardly see some of these characters anymore, and it's kind of sad, not gonna lie. But Mums and Dads is definitely one of my favorite episodes from season 1. Literally any episode with Rusty in it is just a plus. Now let's move on. Actually, you know what? Before we get to the worst episode and the best episode, let's talk about a few honorable mentions for the worst list. Bike. Yet again, nothing really too much wrong with this episode. It's just super boring in my opinion. Like, there's definitely a lot of filler in this episode, and I think that's what Season 1 was really noted for. Just its filler. Episodes like this really show. And although it ain't quite my least favorite, it's definitely one of the more boring ones. Hide and Seek. Speaking of boring filler episodes, basically here, Bluey apparently doesn't know how to play hide and seek. Or, I guess, more so, when Bluey tries to play hide and seek, she gets distracted and goes and do other things. Like, for example, Chattermax, which is basically Bluey's version of a Furby. And yeah, this goes swimmingly. And the fact that it's like, they're right there, come on, just find them already, gets very old quickly. I didn't think one of my favorite shows would ruin one of my favorite games, but they did. And here it is. Butterflies. My goodness, such a boring episode. This is the first episode that we get introduced to Judo, Bluey's other next-door neighbor. Not Lucky, but the other one. And Judo is shown to be a very persnickety, grumpy, annoying character. Hooray, just what we needed. She's not, like, necessarily a big bully or anything, but at the same time, she sort of is. Just a little, like, less, I guess. And it's just very odd seeing Judo at this state, because, man, look at Season 3 and the stuff they did with her. They did so much better with Judo then, but back in Season 1, yeah. Also the fact that I love any episode with Wendy in it, it's just so funny to see. But back in Season 1, we didn't really get to see Wendy too much, and the jokes just weren't as funny, I don't think. And unfortunately, this episode is just a pretty boring one, not gonna lie. Wagon Ride. Speaking of boring episodes, here's Wagon Ride for you. Basically, Bingo and Bluey wake Bandit up early to go to the park, and Bandit keeps stopping to talk to people, and Bluey gets a little frustrated about that. So while they wait for Bandit to hurry up and talk, I guess, they just play with the wagon and find games to do, which eventually does distract her, and heck, even to the point where she doesn't even want to go to the park anymore. This is just one of those dumb filler episodes that they just ran out of time, so they decided to do this one. Unfortunately, a lot of these episodes from Season 1 feel like that. Like, I get it, this is the starter season, but man, Season 3 is so awesome compared to this. Shops. I never would have ever thought I would have put an episode focused on Bluey's friends this far down, especially with Mackenzie in it. It's just so annoying though. Bluey just will never start the game and keeps adding stuff to it. Which, at first, it's like, okay, yeah, but then it just gets to the point where it's like, they're only doing this because why the heck not? Eventually Mackenzie gets old of this thing, and all the viewers are too. I really do love it back in the day when we'd have a lot of episodes focused on Bluey's friends, but I also don't love how they would try to do so much filler stuff, or stuff that didn't work, for example. Like Judo being a bully. Didn't work, it just made her an unlikable character. And this episode is just pretty dry, too. It's just really an annoying Bluey episode. I think we're done with the honorable mentions, though, so let's go on to my number one least favorite. And that is Blue Mountains. So, yeah, this is an episode focused on hands. Great, more hands. Because that worked so well in episodes like Shaun, am I right? And now we get to see Bluey, Bingo, and Chili all do things with their hands. And no, I'm not talking about interesting things. I'm just talking about them climbing up this bandit mountain eventually meeting the Fox, which is just such a plain, simple episode. Like, I literally have nothing to say about it, but why did they choose to use their hands, of all things? Honestly, season 1 is probably my least favorite season of Bluey. Mainly just the fact that, like, if it ain't an episode focused on Bluey's friends, sometimes it can feel really dry and just like they don't know what to do. Season 3, I feel like they've gotten good episodes, but here, I don't know, we're still at that beginning era, so I guess I can't all blame them, but I mean, still, at the same time, it's kind of like when you compare it to this, it ain't quite as good. And I don't know, just seeing a bunch of hands walk around is just so boring to me and just so plain. I've seen this episode like once or twice, and I just skipped it every other time. It ain't necessarily a bad episode or anything, but the fact is, it's so boring it is bad. And in my opinion, it is my least favorite Bluey episode. I think we're done with the bad side, though. Let's go on to the best side. And of course, before we get to the best episode, let's talk about a few honorable mentions. Early Baby. Like I said, any episode with like Bluey's friends in it is immediately a plus. Unless if it's boring, but I mean, for the most part, they're good. I just love the random shenanigans that the kids are getting to this episode. And of course, Rusty being in it, automatically a plus. Like I said, he's one of my favorite characters. And you gotta love the random Rusty and Indy moments yet again. It's too bad that, like, there was only a few episodes focused on the Rusty and Indy stuff. But okay. I love the ending too, where they decide to play mums and dads. It's just such a good and sweet episode. And there's nothing else I really have to say about it. It's definitely one of the better ones of Season 1. Neighbors. Man, I can't be the only one who loves the soundtrack to this episode. The music they come up with is just so catchy. You gotta love all the random, like, classic songs they do, too. You gotta love how this episode jumps straight into action, with Bluey, Bingo, and later Chili and Bandit building, like, houses, I guess, for each other, and pretending that they're all neighbors. And then Bluey gets annoyed at Bingo, and Chili gets annoyed at Bandit, which is always funny to see Chili versus Bandit moments, since it's just so funny. Well, at least when it comes to games like this. But yeah, this episode is a really good one, and it's just such a, like I said, it's a really good one. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Magic Xylophone. Man, the first episode of Bluey of all time, unless if you include that random pilot that got leaked, but we don't count that. Because it ain't in Season 1, why count it? Anywho, Magic Xylophone is the real pilot episode to Bluey, and man, it's such a good one. It shows you what shenanigans the healers get into, and it shows you how a goofy character like Bandit really is. I also find it funny how anytime they hit the xylophone, Bandit just freezes, or eventually Bluey. They do a lot of funny and innovative things with this episode, too. And like I said before, this episode really reminds me of episodes like Asparagus, or even like Fairies, but I think this one's probably the best of the group. It's just such a funny one, and it's done perfectly. Keepy Uppy. Very odd name for a balloon game, but okay. It's simple. Don't let the balloon touch the ground. And balloons were one of my favorites as kids, too. So, seeing an episode based off of that and done well is funny and good. Plus, this is literally like the third episode, so we're still getting used to like the healers and seeing the shenanigans they get into. And Bandit in this episode is just hilarious. Plus, this is the first episode we get to see Lucky, Bluey's next door neighbor, and his dad, Pat. And it's really nice since like all the other kids, Lucky is one of my favorites. And it's fun seeing them get involved with the game too. Like, they do such a good job with it. This episode is very good. Definitely one of the better ones of Season 1. The Doctor. Another amazing episode with Bluey's friends in it. Basically, they're playing doctor. Bingo's the doctor, and Bluey's the one who's checking them in, I guess. You get to see a lot of the kids, like Rusty and Snickers and Indy. I think Chloe there too, and of course Honey. And it's cool how Lucky's there too. This is like one of the first and only times that Lucky's in an episode without his dad. Okay. It can get a little slow at times, which is why it ain't in the top 5. But, I mean, it's one of the original episodes with Bluey's friends in it. Of course it's going to be a good one. Alright, I think we should move on to my personal favorite episode from Season 1, and that is... Bumpy and the Wise Old Wolfhound. Man, what's there not to love about this episode? It is an amazing episode. Basically, Bingo is sick and at the hospital, so Bluey and everyone else puts on a funny video for Bingo to watch. It's about Socks, I guess, getting sick, but then apparently Socks is supposed to put on purple underwear and then that will help from someone who's never gotten sick before? I don't know, it's kind of a funny, by kind of I mean it's a very funny episode. And I love seeing like a lot of the characters we normally don't see in this episode, like Socks and Muffin, and even like Trixie and Stripe. Plus we get to see Mackenzie and Lucky in it too, so okay. And I love how, not really bad, but like how everything like wrong happens. Like Muffin breaks Chili's bowl, and then she messes up in the words. It's just such a funny episode. And in my opinion, I think it's the best episode from Bluey's Season 1. Oh boy, this was something. So next time, I'll probably end up talking about the best episodes from Bluey's Season 2. And then eventually, once all of Season 3 comes out, we can talk about that too. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you probably on Thursday. Bye.